off this countdown, we have the Robert E. Lee statue. In September of 2021, a statue of Robert E. Lee was taken down in Virginia following the protests of the death of George Floyd. Upon taking down the statue, they found a 134-year-old time capsule buried underneath it. The capsule was uncovered inside of a square box, which was 20 feet up inside the granite block that the statue was mounted on. It's thought that the capsule was placed in the pedestal 2 years before the statue was erected. It is believed to contain items from the Civil War and even a rare picture of President Abraham Lincoln lying in his coffin. They just hope that the items have not been damaged by water. The opening of the capsule is said to be performed by a preservation team at a lab within a couple of days. Moving on to number 9, we have the Expo 70 time capsule. In 1970, two major manufacturers decided to create 2 time capsules that would remain unopened for 5,000 years. This was done for the 1970 Expo in Osaka, Japan. So each capsule contains 2,098 objects or recorded items. These items were culturally significant objects to the people of Japan, and most were actually recommended by the public to be put in there. You got everything from music to art to recorded messages and even literature in there. There's also apparently a slinky, ceremonial kimono, and the blackened fingernail of a survivor from the Hiroshima atomic bombing. Now, the time capsules have 2 sets of instructions. The lower capsule will remain buried for 5,000 years. The upper capsule was to be opened in 2000, which it was, and then every 100 years from that, it will be reopened to then be cleaned to ensure its survival. Coming in at number 8, we have the Nickelodeon time capsule. Not gonna lie, I am most excited for this one, just because Nickelodeon played a huge role in my childhood. So Nickelodeon buried a time capsule in 1992. They filled it with tons of 90s memorabilia, including a Game Boy, Home Alone on VHS, a box of Twinkies, and a jar of Gak. They then buried it in front of Nickelodeon Studios at Universal City, California. It is planned to be opened on April 30th, 2042, 50 years after it was buried. So set your calendar, folks. I'm excited. Moving on at number 7, we have George Lucas. Do we have any big Star Wars fans here? How about Indiana Jones? Why, do I ask? Well, George Lucas created his very own time capsule and buried it at Skywalker Ranch. Apparently, the time capsule contains a number of priceless Star Wars memorabilia and artifacts. AKA, that time capsule is gonna be worth millions of dollars. But here's the thing, Lucas never wants the capsule to be unearthed. He said, and I quote, "It's for some archaeologists 2,000 years from now to discover. We have an archive and it is very big, but after a few hundred years it will be gone. So the only thing left is the time capsule." So thousands of years from now, archaeologists will unearth this treasure and be like, yo, how cool was Earth back then? They had lightsabers? That's sick. You know, they won't know what the heck this is. Moving on at number 6, we have the Los Angeles Bicentennial Time Capsule. In 1976, Los Angeles celebrated its bicentennial by burying a time capsule. And you're not going to believe what they put inside of it. They wanted the time capsule to reflect the era. So inside, they put a pet rock and a skateboard. How fitting is that? But they also put a dress worn by none other than Cher and a Lakers basketball jersey, among other memorabilia. All I care about is Cher's dress, though. The capsule is set to open in 2076 for the city's tricentennial. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Martin Luther King Jr. time capsule. Located under the Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C., is a time capsule buried in 1988. This time capsule contains the belongings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You'll find a number of his personal possessions, such as his Bible, a robe he wore to preach in, and most importantly, the audio recordings of a number of his speeches. This capsule is said to be unearthed in 2088. Moving on to number 4, we have the Westinghouse time capsules. The Westinghouse time capsules are 2 time capsules created by the Westinghouse Electric Manufacturing Company. Both were buried at different times, but to be opened at the same time. The first was buried in 1939 and is said to be opened in 69-39. This one contains microfilm, newsreels, seeds, and fabrics. The other time capsule was created in 1964 and is also meant to be opened in 6939. This one contains an electric watch, electric toothbrush, among hundreds of other items that were popular and in demand at that time. Coming in at number 3, we have Bunker Hill. Now, this time capsule is pretty odd. So it was buried in 1961 in Los Angeles and was said to be opened on May 9th of 2011. Yet it has never been opened. Either people forgot about it, or they lost the capsule, or people just can't be bothered to dig it up. But it makes for a good scavenger hunt if you want to go out and find it yourself. I'm just kidding. This capsule is said to contain old telephone equipment, including transistors, solar batteries, and an operator's headset. And now I genuinely want to know what happened to this capsule. Did they just forget where it is or something? Like, I want to know. In our second spot, we have the Sleeping Beauty Castle capsule. In 1995, a time capsule was actually buried at Disneyland. It was buried in Sleeping Beauty's castle. So the next time you go there to take a picture in front of the castle, just think to yourself, wow, I'm standing right above a time capsule. Apparently, this capsule contains artifacts representing the first 40 years of Disneyland. But we still don't know exactly what items are in there. I just predict a lot of Mickey Mouse memorabilia. This time capsule is actually going to be opened very soon, and soon I mean 2035, which is close compared to some of the ones on today's list that won't be open for like thousands of years, okay? And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Crypt of Civilization. This is definitely one time capsule that you do not want opened. Why? Well, it was created in case of the downfall of society, and it's unlike any other capsule on this list. That's because it's not just a tiny box, but it's a full-on chamber. So it was built from 1937 to 1940. It's a 2,000 cubic foot room filled with documents and artifacts, like 640,000 pages of microfilmed books, religious texts, etc. It even contains a special language integrator to help teach English to whoever finds the vault. It also contains items such as 800 works of every subject, historical recordings, and items to show our technological advancements like typewriters. Now, the opening date of this capsule is not for another 600 years, or like I said, until our society fails. This vault is said to preserve our way of life in case of a mass extinction. There's also a bunch of random stuff in this vault that I had to let you guys know, like there's Lincoln Logs, throwback to those, pantyhose, because why not, and a figurine of Donald Duck. Yes, because those items are imperative for a society to flourish. Imperative. Starting off this countdown, we have the world's largest time capsule. Sealed in 1975 in Seward, Nebraska, this time capsule is said to be the largest time capsule in the world. It was built by Harold Keith Davison, and it's a 45-ton vault buried deep below the earth. He built this for his grandchildren. He said he wanted them to know what life was like back in the 1970s. So he filled the capsule with 5,000 items from the time, including a brand new Chevy Vega. Yeah, he buried a car down there, and a brand new motorcycle, and an aquamarine suit. Needless to say, this guy has a lot of free time and money. In our 9th spot, we have the National Millennium Time Capsule. Buried on December 14th, 1999, this time capsule was built in order to preserve some artifacts that best represented America at that time. Inside of there was a helmet from World War II, the Bill of Rights, photos of Earth from space, a piece of the Berlin Wall, and a film reel showing Neil Armstrong's moon landing. Then you got some cool pop culture items like Ray Charles's sunglasses, broadcasts of the Metropolitan Opera, and a copy of The Grapes of Wrath, and a Twinkie, which was actually removed because they didn't want mice or other pests getting into the capsule, trying to eat the Twinkie and then ruining the other artifacts. But even if they did keep the Twinkie inside there, that thing would probably stay preserved and not go moldy, which says a lot about those treats. Anyways, this time capsule is said to be open in 2100. In our 8th spot today, we had the Axe Monument. Over in New Brunswick, Canada, a giant axe monument was erected as a tribute to the lumber and forestry industry there. The axe is made up of 55 tons of steel. It's 23 feet in length, and the handle extends about 50 feet in the air. It is massive. And apparently there is a time capsule placed inside of the head of the axe. The only thing is that we have no clue exactly what was placed inside. And there's no instructions as to when we should open it. They just say, oh, the time capsule is for future generations, and that's it. I mean, we are the future generation, so can we open it? Like, it's so mysterious. I want to know what's inside of it. But knowing it's Canadian, it's probably like, I don't know, a maple syrup recipe or something. And I can say that because I'm Canadian. Coming in at number 7, we have the Girls Adventure Group time capsule. In 1976, a girls adventure troupe in Billing, Montana decided to create and bury their own time capsule. Now, the contents of this capsule are pretty all over the place. First, and most importantly, you got a princess telephone, okay? Then they also buried a digital watch, tapes of music, news programs, and bicentennial stamps with a 1976 postmark. And then you got a box of bullets. So imagine you're going through this time capsule and you're like, oh, cute, you know, did a Girl Scouts group bury this? Did they leave a box of cookies in there? And then you reach in and you pull out a box of bullets. I'd be like, dang, what were these girls up to, you know? Moving on to number 6, we have the helium time column. Now, this is a pretty interesting time capsule, and that's because it's a column. Each column is filled with helium and represents a different theme of the time. The capsule was created in 1968 in Texas to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the discovery of helium. From there, the capsule is to be opened 25, 50, 100, and 1,000 years from its construction. So the first 2 capsules have already been opened. The first one had the theme of man and his dependence on natural resources, and the contents were not shown publicly. But the next one, opened in 2018, contained stamps, documents, toy cars, and other miscellaneous items. These items are now on display at the Discovery Center. That year's theme was the industry and its use of natural resources. The other capsule, set to be opened in 2068, has the theme of science and its development of natural resources, and the one to be opened in 2968 has the theme of history's efforts towards conservation. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Drake Well. Buried in 1959 by the National Petroleum Institute, this capsule contains a couple of random items. The first thing, which is the coolest thing, is it contains seeds from 33 different states. Then there's also a 16mm film and a letter from President Eisenhower. Now, here's the thing. The time capsule was said to be opened in 2000. However, it never was. People believe that the time capsule is lost, and that's why it was never opened. Like, come on guys, you had one job. How do you forget where you buried this thing? Moving on to number 4, we have the Kansas Centennial Capsule. This one actually has a pretty funny story associated with it. So this capsule was buried in 1972 in Great Bend, Kansas. The town had a ceremony for this, and at the ceremony, they asked the attendees to place an object inside of the capsule. But this was spontaneous, so no one had a sentimental item on them. So the people of the town were just randomly throwing in items from their pockets. This created a huge scandal. Now, we don't know exactly what's in this capsule. We know for sure that there are audio tapes and a $1,000 check for sure, but we don't know what the people randomly threw in from their pockets. The capsule is still buried, and there is no official date as to when it's going to be opened. So I guess we'll just have to keep waiting to see the mysteries inside of this capsule. It's probably just a lot of like hair ties, bobby pins, and Kleenexes, you know? In our 3rd spot, we have the Pershing Square Underground Garage. Now, this is a pretty mysterious time capsule because not much is known about it. What we do know is that it was assembled in 1951 in Pershing Square Underground Garage in LA. We don't know what's inside of it, but whatever it is weighs about 225 pounds. Sadly, we won't be around when it's opened because it's set to be opened in 2951. So I guess we'll never know what they put inside of it. In our 2nd spot, we have the Juno time capsule. In 1994, a 9 by 6 foot chamber was filled with thousands of artifacts by locals. This was part of a citywide project. Those that participated could place an item inside of the capsule. Many of them are relics from the 90s. You got Barbies, a Sony Walkman, even a Wonder Bra. Other people chose to put in their old driver's licenses, family mementos, and one person put in a box containing menus from all of Juno's restaurants, and that's pretty cool. I'd love to see that. There's also hundreds of letters written by school children to the students of the future. I'd also like to read those. And apparently we can't, because copies of these notes were put on display years later, but the original ones are still sealed away. This capsule will be opened on New Year's Eve of 2094. And in our number one spot today, we have Richard Nixon's time capsule. It's believed that Richard Nixon, the 27th President of the United States, hid a time capsule in the White House before his time was up. According to Earl Robert Merritt, Richard's confidant, the capsule contains proof of extraterrestrials. Like, this is just wild. Of course, over the years, people have questioned Earl and his statement, but he swears that the president met with him in secret and read him a letter stating that the US was protecting ETs. He also claims that scientists were conducting experiments and communicating with aliens. To this day, the location of this time capsule is still unknown. Only a handful of people know where it's hidden. And according to Nixon, the capsule will surface when the time is right, whatever that means.
Going off at number 10 now, we have the Star Wars capsule. Even some of the biggest Star Wars fans in the world might not know that there is a secret Star Wars time capsule somewhere out there. It's buried at Skywalker Ranch in California. It was put there by Star Wars creator George Lucas. He put it in the corner of the building and filled it with secret artifacts from the Star Wars movies. George was once asked when would this time capsule be opened, and he said never. Literally never. Well, not quite never, but he wants it to be discovered in the distant future by archaeologists. This is bad news for die-hard Star Wars fans out there who are really hoping to one day see the priceless contents of this time capsule. Moving on now to number 9, we have the Millennium Time Capsule. Now, as you guys might guess from the name, this time capsule was buried at the turn of the millennium in the year 2000. It was sealed by the White House and contains a number of culturally significant items from history. These include a CD, photos of Earth from space, a computer chip, a World War II helmet, a cell phone, a piece of the Berlin Wall, and even a photo of Rosa Parks. There's also a pair of Ray Charles sunglasses, because, you know, why not? For me though, the most interesting thing they put in there might actually be Twinkies. Yeah, an actual pack of Twinkies. However, I also read that the Twinkies were later removed because they were attracting mice. I guess people in 1,000 years will know a lot about our world, but almost nothing about Twinkies. What a shame. Next up at number 8 now, we have the largest time capsule. The town of Seward, Nebraska claims to have the world's largest time capsule. It was constructed by local store owner Harold Keith Davison, who wanted his grandchildren to know what his life was like when he buried it in 1975. The 45-ton vault was buried under a mound of dirt on the front lawn of his appliance store. It's packed with artifacts from his own life and also general items from the 1970s. The most striking item has to be his Chevy Vega car, which still sits inside the vault to this day. Moving on now to number 7, we have the Westinghouse time capsules. These are a pair of time capsules prepared by the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company. The first one was buried for the 1939 New York World Fair and contained fabrics, metals, plastics, literature, art, and news events from the time recorded on microfilm. The capsules are intended to be open in the year 6939, a full 5,000 years after they were buried. In that distant future, our language and culture may be so different that whoever finds the capsule may not know what to do with any of the items inside. This is why the creators of the time capsule included detailed instructions on how to make a microfilm viewer and also a projector for the newsreels. I'm sure the future humans will really appreciate that. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Helium Centennial Time Columns Monument. This was constructed in 1968 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the discovery of helium. The time capsule is actually made up of 4 different parts. The different parts are supposed to be opened after 25 years and 50, then 100, and then 1,000 years. The first 2 have already been opened, but the third will not be open until the year 2068 and the final one until the year 3068. Now that last capsule contains a passbook for a $10 savings account from an Oklahoma City bank, which draws 4% interest every year. After 1,000 years, it will be worth over $1 quadrillion. So definitely worth the wait. Next up at number 5 now, we have Keo. Technically, Keo isn't a time capsule yet, but for me it's too interesting to not include on this list. Keo is a proposed space time capsule which was intended to launch back in 2003. It would be set on a course that would lead back to Earth 50,000 years in the future. It sounded like the perfect time capsule. It will be out there drifting in space without ever being tainted or ruined by people here on Earth. And what would the world look like when it finally landed again in 50,000 years? Well, fans of the project have been left wondering those questions. The project was delayed until 2006, then to 2007, then 2008, then 2010, and then basically every year since then. Currently, the Kia website cites 2009 as its launch. They're inviting every person in the world to contribute to their capsule. They're looking for people to post messages to the people living 50,000 years in the future. They promise that every message will be included without any censorship. Although Kia has been delaying its launch now for over 15 years, many people still send their messages to them just in case the project ever does go ahead. Moving on now to number 4, we have the CN Tower. Some of you may be surprised to learn that our channel is based in Toronto, Canada. Perhaps the most iconic landmark in this city is the CN Tower. Standing at over 1,800 feet, it's towered over the city since its completion in 1976. To mark the occasion, a time capsule was placed at the very top of the tower inside the walls of the lookout level. It's intended to be opened in the year 2076, a century after its completion. Inside, the contents contain a letter from former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, letters from school children at the time, copies of 3 newspapers, Canadian coins and bills, and even a video about how the tower was constructed. Isn't that nice? Next up at number 3 now, we have the Crypt of Civilization. This is a sealed, airtight chamber from 1940 at Oglethorpe University in Georgia. The 2,000 cubic foot room contains many artifacts from the time, including everyday items, famous books, voice recordings of people such as Franklin Roosevelt or Adolf Hitler, and even a sound recording of Popeye. Don't know why. The time capsule was thought up by Thornwell Jacobs, who felt that there was so little information available from ancient civilizations and that someone had to make sure that this never happened again. He stated that because the ancient Egyptian calendar was established 6,177 years before this vault was sealed, that is also how long the vault should be sealed for. This means the Crypt of Civilization will not be opened until the year 8113. So far, only about 78 years have passed, so there's still quite a while to go yet. At the number 2 spot now, we have Time Capsule Expo 1970. In 1968, 2 Japanese companies, Panasonic and the Mainichi newspapers, agreed to build a joint time capsule for the Japan World Exposition in 1970. It was opened up again in the year 2000 to examine its contents. It was decided that the capsule would be checked for this every 100 years. For how long, I hear you ask? Until the year 6968, 5,000 years after it was buried. When archaeologists of the future dig it up, they will find the time capsule contains items such as false teeth, a glass eye, insects in resin, an origami book, handcuffs, and even fake money. A competition was held among local Japanese school children to write a letter to the people living 5,000 years in the future. The winning entry read, "How are you, people of 5,000 years from now? I wish I could live again in your age, but I am quite happy now. I have kind parents and also a sister with whom I quarrel with once in a while. We must do our best until the next age takes over. Goodbye from 5,000 years in the past." And finally, at number 1 now, we have the Yahoo capsule. In 2006, tech company Yahoo set up a time capsule project where users could contribute to how digital life was like in the year 2006. When they cut off the submissions, they had received over 170,000 messages, with the largest amount coming from people in their 20s. The collection was then sealed and given to the Smithsonian Folkways Recordings in Washington, D.C. It was decided that the capsule will be opened in 2020 to mark the 25th birthday of Yahoo. The capsule will only have been sealed for about 14 years by that point, but as I'm sure many of you are aware, that might as well be 1,000 years when it comes to the changing landscape of the internet.